We're back right now with Ask Christina Anything with me, Warren Edgar, and of course, Christina LaBell. Christina, how you doing?
Fantastic.
All right, so we're back with our second edition, and this time we're going to focus on one question, and we're going to have a discussion on that. All right?
Great.
So our first question is, how do you end a relationship? You know, or at least how do you slow down? Because I hear people all the time go, I'm in this relationship and we're going so fast, and I don't know how to slow down without stopping. Do you need to stop? Is there a way to slow down? Is it inevitable that you've already killed it out of the gate?
I think that's almost multifaceted in the sense that when you are speeding along and you slow down, any sort of change to the dynamic feels uncomfortable. So you kind of have to navigate that of what made you speed up so fast? What does it look like slowing down? Because that can be an uncomfortable state when the same contact's not there, the same intimacy isn't there. So I think that's a really delicate dance of how do you maintain each partner's needs while still respecting the fact that things just moved too fast. How do you kind of rebuild in a slower manner?
So I guess you're saying that it's a conversation that both of you need to have, where you sit down and you reevaluate what's going on. Would you say more like, as in both people need to, I don't know if sacrifices is the word to use, but that both people need to contribute something to that, is what you're saying?
Absolutely, you know, because maybe only one partner feels like it's speeding along and maybe the other person feels like it's slow. You know, perception is our reality, and if we're not checking in and getting that pulse check of how are they feeling, what are they experiencing, how is our time together changing or morphing, is it blending? Like there's just so many questions, and I think it's just great to do that pulse check with your partner.
But how would you approach someone like that? Because if you're already in that situation, going to your partner and going, I think we're slowing down, that might be hard for someone because they might feel, well, if I go to my partner and tell them that, they might feel like, oh, this is over, and they might go instantly to that self-destructive mindset, or that mindset of, you know, let's get the relationship done with now. How do you approach someone with that? Because that's a really complicated conversation to have.
Absolutely. And I think I can speak to personal experience where I've had somebody want to slow down a relationship and I thought that meant all the cards were on the table and it wasn't. So I think definitely asking questions and not being afraid to don't leave any of your curiosity hanging. Don't assume you know the answers to every question. I think that's just a natural reflex as us humans. Just really try to get that insight into what their mind is focusing on, and if slowing down means a stop for the other partner, then that just might be an unmendable bridge that somebody might need more affection than that person can either give them now in this moment or going forward. So that just might be a good indicator that if they can't help you bridge this gap while you're figuring out what slowing down means, how are they going to help you excel when you guys are both running in the distance in the future?
So you're saying that it's a good time to kind of almost sit and reevaluate kind of your relationship with this person. And is that person in it for the long run, or does that person have the same goals that you might have?
Absolutely. I think that we do forget that most relationships, especially intimate relationships in our life, are going to end.
Yeah.
They have an expiration date on them. Even the ones we don't want to, or the ones we see a full vision with. At the end of the day, most of those relationships aren't going to pan out. You're not going to end up walking down the aisle in a white dress, you know? So I think really managing that side of how we navigate relationships and knowing that not every person's the right fit, so don't try to force everything. Because I know, especially as we age, we force things that maybe we wouldn't have earlier because we're feeling society pressures or those norms to check those boxes. So just being authentic to yourself and what your needs are, and not rushing forward or slowing down for somebody else just to not be alone.
Awesome. I think that was really well put. All right. Well, we will have more questions right after this break. Thank you so much, Christina. Stay with us. And we're back right now on Ask Christina Anything. I'm here with the lovely, beautiful Christina LaBell. Christina, how you doing?
Good. I'm so curious what the next questions are.
Awesome. So our next question comes from our very own, you know her, Jamie Terrelin. And she asks a very interesting question. We haven't gotten this question yet. It has to do with video game pornography, especially games that involve pornographic scenes or intimate situations. She asks, is that cheating to be for your partner or significant other to be playing those games?
I think that I think it boils down to what is their involvement in those games? What is the amount of time they're spending on those games? Are they taking away from you and your intimate connection directly? An example of that would be if two people were at home hanging out watching a movie and one person goes off and spends hours at a time indulging in that kind of lifestyle. I would say that's cheating on them in the sense of time that could have been spent during your relationship and your partnership, leaving them feeling left out or that they can't fulfill something that you were seeking elsewhere. And any kind of relationship, I think, would be a detriment.
So almost would you say that, and I know this is, differing from her question, but would you say that pornography runs in a similar street in that we should only be concerned about it if it's taking away from the time that you're spending with your partner and that your partner chooses to watch pornography versus be involved with you?
Yeah, I think to a degree, absolutely. Anything that monopolizes somebody's time or thought that can be considered in a way that isn't helping a relationship be fruitful can create frustration and tension and is going to change that relationship for the negative.
But would you say that pornography is cheating?
I don't necessarily feel like pornography is cheating in it of itself. Again, I think that we can tend to start down one path and before we know it, we have veered and diverged and we're in a whole new territory. So I think it's a slippery slope and that's kind of what I would chalk it up to. And it's kind of like fast food. It has to be in moderation or it's not healthy.
So basically what you're saying is the act of watching intimate scenes with other people, you're not cheating on your significant other, you're just indulging in something like you would fast food or any other leisurely activity like that.
Yeah, that's definitely how I perceive it. Like if I was in a relationship and my partner occasionally watched porn, I would be fine with that. It would be where I wouldn't be fine with it or where the dynamic would change is how many hours a day or minutes a day are they spending there versus with me or an experience in real life. And if that progresses into they proceed down other paths without me, that's where the fear comes in, I believe. But just pornography in and of itself in small increments and indulgence, I don't think is dangerous.
But if we were to broaden this, because you mentioned, these activities, but back to Jamie's point, video game pornography, would you say that let's take porn out of the element? What if someone is spending a lot of time on just a regular video game or in a hobby or something that doesn't involve you? What would you say to that? Is that different? Is that the same?
I think it's different because where it becomes hobbies, that's part of the characteristics of your partner that you initially probably were drawn to. So say my partner liked hockey and then suddenly they started playing more and more and I became frustrated. Well, why is my frustration on me? I shouldn't be frustrated. That's who he was before he came into the relationship. And if I'm frustrated, that's because I'm trying to change him. And who wants that? You want people that accept you and embrace you and support you in your endeavors.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. All right, we'll have more questions for Christina LaBell right after these messages from our sponsors. Stay with us. We're back right here on Ask Christina Anything. I'm here with the wonderful, beautiful Christina LaBell. Christina, we have one last question from Angie from Portland. Angie asks, do you save a marriage if you find that your significant other, that your partner in life has acted unfaithful to you? And she went on to ask, what if you're in a situation where you have kids, where you've dedicated your life to be with this person and you find that they're unfaithful? In that situation, can you save that marriage? Should you save that marriage?
I think this is multi-factor. I think my first question out of the gate would be, was this a one-time intimate encounter or was this an illicit affair? And that would be the biggest piece of information I would need to work on. I think I could have a lot more forgiveness for my partner if they had a weak moment versus total lapse in judgment over and over again. So that would be probably what I would examine first, of what truly did take place. And then my next question would be just where I am in my family dynamic. How old are my children? Am I going to be stable enough on my own if I made that detachment from my spouse, and what would that look like for myself? And then also, I think that you need to know of what kind of relationship do you have? Is it one that you think you could get back to the place where you started? Because I do think some people can work through infidelity, and it really all depends on that stage and where you're at and kind of how you think you can proceed forward.
So if we were to kind of address some of these questions and say, okay, let's say this was a one-time thing, that is different in your book, you would say, than an actual committed affair?
I would say for sure. I think it'd be easier for me to accept that my partner was unfaithful one time than in something where they could potentially love another person. You know, I think that would be a line for me that there is no counseling that we can try. There is no re-falling in love or team building at that point. For me, it would just be writings on the wall. And then it would be the next step to protect children throughout that separation and what that would look like. But I would proceed forward with that.
So would you say that, and back to the point about children, you had mentioned it depends on the age of the children. Would you say that it's okay to separate if your children are older or younger? Like, what, is there a good time to separate when you have children? Is there an ideal point? Should you?
I mean, I think that's almost an impossible question to ask, but I think the older the children are, the easier it is, where they don't need to necessarily know all the details, but you should be honest with your children. And if you're separating because of an affair or because of infidelity, that should be addressed to a degree. You know, details don't need to be had, but they do need to have the true information so they can process and understand, and also not harbor resentment in the wrong way. You know, it's a moment of teaching for what decisions can make for the lasting effect.
And would you say that, let's say you had children at a somewhat mature age, we'll say 14, and you were to then, separate with your significant other, is it advisable to stay together in some capacity, as in to maintain somewhat of a friendly friendship for the sake of your children, or do you think it's entirely up to you and how you feel?
I think you are right. I think that the best way for any split, especially when there's children, is for it to be amicable. And you want to set a relationship expectation for your children to see that even after a separation or a divorce, that people can be amicable and they can respect people. That's bottom line. You want your children to respect people in their lives in the same manner, in the same capacity that you want to be respected. So I always admire when I meet a new potential date and they're friends with their exes. I never feel challenged by that. I say that's a line of respect, that they appreciated that person. And even though my marriage is deteriorating in front of me, I had 14 good years, or I had 20 good years. And for that, I will respect. And for that, I will honor. So I kind of look at it that way of, why would you want to go into it and tear each other apart and make things that are already difficult way more difficult?
That's really well put, and I think it would also be a teaching moment for your children in saying, this is how you deal with a relationship like this, because they're human, they're going to grow up, and they might encounter the same things.
Absolutely. It's about self-respect at the end of the day and what you can handle and what you deserve. And I think being a good example of that is important even through the most difficult transitions in life, and that could be divorce. All right.
Well, Christina, thank you so much for coming on and answering these questions. You can send in your own questions by emailing us at askchristinaanythingpmc@gmail.com. Thank you so much, and we'll see you later. Thank you.